And good afternoon / good evening, fellow students of Jesus. It's good to be connecting with you guys. I hope everybody is keeping up with their small groups and small group leaders through a GroupMe. If you have not downloaded that, please do it as soon as possible. It's our most frequent way of keeping in contact. Be checking our YouTube channel and Instagram and Facebook page to stay in communication. Hope everything's going well. From what I gather from talking to some of our different people, and this is good. This is a good problem to have. Boredom seems to be the thing that everybody is experiencing most commonly, right? And so I do want to take this time to remind you, boredom can cause, they can make little problems big problems, right? So a lot of you remember that one time I threw the firecracker in the toilet. I'm not telling the rest of the story on here so it doesn't get around to everybody and then they would hunt me down and punish me, right? But that was as a result of boredom, right? And so just be careful, be wise. I've been watching a lot of the news lately, and one of the things that I heard is that the person that started the lick the toilet bowl challenge, right, to show that he was tougher than Corona or something, has got Corona, right? So that was not a wise decision. Don't lick any doorknobs, don't join the challenge, stuff like that, right? But that being said, knowing that some people are dealing with boredom in ways like that, you can imagine how horrified I was when Kara and Candace and me were sitting in the living room. Ricky's playing with his blocks on the floor, and we noticed that Nora is on all fours and licking the ground. And we just freeze. Like, we can't make sense of what's happening. My first thought was to throw her phone in the lake so she can't follow these social media influencers anymore. That's a joke. She doesn't have a phone. She doesn't know who these people are. And but my first thought was, what is happening? And we were just frozen for about 2 seconds until Candace said, "Oh guys, it's okay, look at the TV." And we look at the TV, and it was all the animals from The Lion King drinking out of the watering hole at the same time. Live action, fantastic movie, not as good as the original cartoon because the hyenas are 100,000 times funnier on the cartoon, right? But that being said, Nora was not joining the lick the toilet bowl or ground challenge. She was simply imitating what she saw on TV, right? And you probably have noticed this at this point in your life, that human beings are driven to imitate the people around them, to adjust to our environment. It's one of the reasons we dominate the planet, right? Because humans are very cooperative. We learn very quickly from each other. And that's a great thing as long as you're imitating and following someone that can lead you really well, right? And so one thing I remember Dallas Willard saying years ago that helped me a lot is he said, you are someone's disciple. You are somebody's student. You can't not be someone's disciple or student. You are following someone, right? All of us are. And it's probably better if we know who we're following, right? And how we're being influenced. And you can ask yourself, who am I following on social media? List the people that you look up to the most, all that sort of thing. One of the reasons we do that is because we believe that the people we're following have the best chance of leading us to the good life, whatever that is. And so I'll be talking today about following Jesus, because the message that I just want to be harping on and living every day of my life is that to follow Jesus, to be his student, is the greatest opportunity any human being could ever have in any situation. So whether it's just the problem of us being bored in our houses, or if we lived at the time of the Black Death in Europe, right? Or if we lived in economic booms in countries, or during times of utter stability or revolution, no matter what's going on around us, because we're human and because God is who he is, there is never a greater opportunity than to be a student of Jesus, to follow him, to imitate him, to become who he would be if he were in our particular position, right? And so what we're going to be talking about tonight and in the next few weeks is how to follow Jesus in the four walls of our house, right? I mean, we can kind of move around a little bit. We can go for walks and stuff, but for a little while, the wisest thing to do is to stay pretty close to home, right? And so one of my favorite things about being a follower of Jesus is that you can do it anywhere at any time, right? There is a certain way that Jesus would be if he was sticking around the house in order to prevent the spread of the coronavirus, right? So there are ways that we can imitate him in this way. So to help us get a little bit of perspective, I'm going to, I guess, take us back to a time where we could follow Jesus by walking around in daily life when everything used to be pretty normal, right? And so I remember when I was in college, a lot of you guys have heard this. I made a reference to it in my most recent video on the YouTube channel. But in college, I went through a time of incredible purposelessness, aimlessness. There was this feeling of, I know that a human being like me has a ton of time and potential. Everybody does. But I was in this state of saying, I just don't know what to apply it to. Like, I really am not sure that I know the best way to live, what truly causes more good than harm. And I remember in my prayer time, praying and saying, Jesus, if you showed up at my door, I would drop everything and follow you. Just in the way that people dropped everything and followed him when he called them, right? They'd leave their families, they would leave their jobs. Some of the disciples left their fishing nets and boats and followed Jesus because they realized what an opportunity it was. And for me, it was urgent. It was like, I want to do this. I'd love it if you just showed up, right? And made it easier for me. But that being said, I'm sure you guys can guess this, Jesus didn't show up to my door. And so I had to figure out how to follow Jesus without it being on foot in his physical presence, right? And years later, I remember listening to this one lecture by this fantastic pastor named Eugene Peterson. And he said that Peter and Judas, two of the 12 disciples, followed Jesus around on foot for 3.5 years. They actually followed him on foot, what I wanted to do, right? And he says, and in the critical moment, they revealed themselves to be zealots. And what that meant was they revealed themselves as people who wanted a revolution more than they wanted to follow Jesus. So Peter shows this by pulling out a sword and doing, attacking a guy. And even then, Jesus is quite directly saying, you're not on the same page as me. You're not really following me. He says, put away the sword, right? This isn't how we're doing things. And so what Eugene Peterson was saying is, it's possible to follow Jesus on foot for 12 years and still not get it, right? To still not really be following him in your heart. And what Eugene said was, it is prayer that gets the following into us, right? And that's the goal, is to get the following of Jesus into our bones, into our heart, into our soul, mind, and strength, to internalize the character and beliefs and feelings and interpretations and mental processes and habits as Jesus would have if he were in our particular position. And so that's going to be the big thing I'm calling for today, is to make use of the time that we have to do this one thing that's indispensable, whether we're in a quarantine situation or whether we can get on planes and cruises and go anywhere we go. The indispensable way of following Jesus is to adopt the prayer life and rhythms that he has, and to pray in the way that he would, because the way we pray is deeply formative. It will turn us into a certain type of person, right? And so when his students realized that Jesus knows how to pray, like he's got a good prayer life, he's wise, I want to be like him, they said, teach us how to pray. And so I would recommend memorizing this. I'm sure all this will be familiar to you, but I would recommend memorizing the prayer that Jesus taught his students. It's found in Matthew chapter 6, verses 9 through 13, and it says this: Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Or in other words, I love your name. Great is your name. It's great to be talking to you, right? Hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, which means people that owe us something. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Now, one of my favorite things about this prayer is, in any prayer really, is that it's a helpful thing to do when we know that we need to be recentered, right? We talked about that quite a bit in the recent emotions series. That's going to be something that's necessary in this time and in any other, right? Because there's so much busyness, there's so many emotions. I've realized I gotta stop looking at the news every 4 minutes, right? Because it makes me mad. It doesn't even make me scared or angry. It just makes me angry, or it makes me just distracted, frustrated. And so I need to truly recenter, right? And so that's one of the things that the Lord's Prayer does. Remember how we said in the emotions series over and over again that perspective gives you 80 IQ points, right? And the Lord's Prayer, beginning with Our Father in Heaven, gives us the perspective of eternity in the backdrop, right? That is the perspective we want. It helps us see beyond just the events that are going on and reminds us that God's not shocked, surprised by any of this. He's aware of it, and he has purposes for it. He can work in any condition to get done what he wants to get done. Remember, like we've said over and over again, the main thing that God gets out of your life, the main thing that you get out of your life, is the person you become, right? He's turning us into a particular type of people through this, and the biggest way that we can be formed is to continually pray that prayer. And so I'm encouraging you guys to memorize it, employ that, use it multiple times a day, right? It shapes us. It's the greatest opportunity that we have to become as Jesus would be in our position. That's one of the indispensable ways, okay? So we'll be checking up on you guys. We'll be coaching you, encouraging you to embrace the habit of praying this prayer. And we love you guys. We hope you're doing good. Yeah, make the most of it. All right, let us know if you need anything. Peace.